Sri Lanka has been known for centuries as the pearl of the Indian Ocean. Larger than the U.S. state of West Virginia, this island off the southern tip of India is home to over 600 unique species of animals found nowhere else on Earth. Like these tokmatax. These endemic monkeys are named for the distinctive tuft of hair on the top of their heads, resembling a hat. Troops of monkeys can range in size, consisting of anywhere from 8 to more than 40 individuals. They are one of 3 species of monkeys native to the island, another being the tuft gray langur. This species are found throughout the Indian subcontinent, but thrive here in Sri Lanka, where they feed mostly on the lush vegetation in the dry forest canopy. Sri Lanka is home to the highest density of elephants anywhere in Asia. The Sri Lankan elephant is the largest recognized subspecies of Asian elephants, growing nearly 12 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing between 2 and 6 tons. They are classified as mega herbivores, consuming over 300 pounds of plant matter daily. Their skin color is darker than that of their Indian and Sumatran cousins, with larger and more distinctive patches of orange depigmentation on the ears, face, and trunk. Only 7% of Sri Lankan elephant males bear tusks. They are highly sociable, with females and calves generally forming groups between 12 and 20. However, at some locations, such as Minaria National Park, groups of hundreds, from newborns to adults older than 70, can be seen grazing and socializing together. These elephants are migratory animals, traveling very predictable paths between the wet and dry seasons. However, as a result of human expansion, many of these ancient migration routes now intersect with farms, roads, and train lines. In the past, elephants were widely distributed across the entire island, from sea level to its highest mountain ranges. In the first half of the 19th century, much of the land in Sri Lanka's highland forests were cleared for the large-scale production of tea. The humidity, cool temperatures, and rainfall of Sri Lanka's central highlands create an ideal climate for the farming of some of the world's most high-quality tea. Up until the very end of the 20th century, Sri Lanka was the world's leading exporter of tea. Today, a billion-dollar industry, it is one of the main sources of foreign exchange for the country. It employs over 1 million people, with tea farming by smallholders being the main form of livelihood for tens of thousands of Sri Lankan families. The name Sri Lanka was introduced by the independence movement during the first half of the 20th century and officially adopted in 1972. For over 100 years of British control, the island was known to the outside world as Ceylon. To this day, many of its tea exports are marketed internationally as Ceylon tea. The extensive rail system that now covers the island was introduced by the British colonial government in the late 1800s as a means to transport increasingly vast quantities of tea and other cash crops from the rough hill country to seaside trading ports. For hundreds of years, the island was divided into numerous different independent kingdoms before coming to be primarily dominated by the powerful Kingdom of Kandy in the 16th century. However, during this time, Portuguese, Dutch, and British colonialists began establishing trading ports along the country's coastline. In 1815, the British seized control of the island in its entirety, establishing the colony of British Ceylon, which remained a dominion of the British Empire until 1972. Beginning in 1983, Sri Lanka was divided in a brutal civil war that lasted 25 years, with peace finally being restored in 2008. In addition to the country's verdant interior, the warm waters around Sri Lanka have been a lifeline for its coastal communities for generations. Negombo is the largest fishing city in the country. Its natural lagoon is fed by the surrounding network of rivers and canals and creates a rich feeding ground for tropical fish. The fishermen of Negombo rely mainly on their traditional knowledge of the seasons to bring in their catches from September through April. After bringing in their haul, the fish are dried in the blazing sun and prepared for sale at the market. Negombo has been given the nickname Little Rome because of the prevalence of Portuguese-era Catholic churches found throughout the township. According to Sri Lankan Christian traditions, the Apostle Thomas preached the gospel in Sri Lanka in the 1st century AD. Colombo is the commercial capital and largest city of Sri Lanka. Colombo is home to over 5.5 million people in its metro area. The city's modern history began in 1593 when it was established as a Portuguese military stronghold. It was made the capital of the island when Sri Lanka was ceded to the British Empire in 1815. And its status as a capital was retained when the nation became independent in 1948. The influence of Colombo's rich history is clearly visible in all aspects of life. The city's culture showcases a unique blend of European clothing, architecture, and language, together with local customs. But the history of Sri Lanka began well before the colonial era, with evidence of prehistoric settlements as early as 40,000 years ago. Modern historians believe its prehistoric inhabitants practiced an early form of Hinduism, focused mainly on the worship of Shiva. A tradition carried on by the majority of Sri Lankan Hindus to this day. In the 3rd century BC, the Indian Emperor Ashoka the Great sent a series of Buddhist missionaries to Sri Lanka. Since the earliest missionaries arrived, the island has been a center of Buddhist scholarship. It was in Sri Lanka that the main scriptures of Theravada Buddhism were written down for the very first time. From Sri Lanka, the Theravada tradition subsequently spread to the rest of Southeast Asia, today being the dominant religion in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. Today, Theravada Buddhism is the largest and official religion of Sri Lanka, practiced by 70% of the population. There are almost 6,000 Buddhist monasteries across Sri Lanka, with approximately 30,000 monks. The monks are expected to serve as living examples of the ideals of Buddhist doctrine, and in return, they are supported by the community. Throughout most of its history, the Sri Lankan royal family played a major role in protecting the Buddhist institutions of the island. This is the Royal Palace of Kandy. For hundreds of years, it was the residence of the most powerful royal families of Sri Lanka, who considered themselves guardians of the Buddhist tradition on the island. Over the centuries, it also became one of the holiest places of pilgrimage for Buddhists around the world. In the heart of the royal complex, this elaborate shrine supposedly protects a tooth of the Buddha and is visited by hundreds daily. But the royal complex in Kandy is not the only standing testament to the country's regal history. Sigiriya is an ancient fortress in central Sri Lanka, carved into a massive column of rock over 600 feet high. The name Sigiriya means Lion Rock, named for this formidable gateway. It was constructed as the new impregnable capital for a renegade king in the year 477 AD. Sigiriya is today considered by many archaeologists one of the finest examples of urban planning of the first millennium, featuring some of the oldest landscape gardens in the world and pools fed by ancient hydraulic systems that still function today. Sigiriya was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1982, and today is visited by over 1 million guests annually. Standing as a monumental testament to the rich cultural heritage of Sri Lanka.